If there was ever a time Howie could get out from under a top draft pick early in his career, this year would be it, because of so much excitement revolving around the addition of Adrian Brown, the development of Devonta Smith, adding Hassan Reddick and James Bradbury. All of those headlines overshadow him being ushered out the back door.
Yeah, so I hear you, and I'm not going to get on here and be a Jalen Reagor defender, right? I mean, we've all seen what's happened during these past 2 years. I do think he's had a good summer.
Welcome back, everybody. Sports Take on this Monday. Rob Ellis, Derek Gunn, Barrett Brooks hanging with you. Thrilled to be joined by our next guest. You can follow him on Twitter at ZBerm. He covers the Philadelphia Eagles for The Athletic. He is also the author of Underdogs, the one and only Zach Berman. What's up, ZBerm? How you doing?
Zach,
hey, doing
what's up?
Great. Hey, I'm doing well. Thanks for having me on. Busy week this week, but always make time for Rob, D, Gunn, and Barrett.
Thank you, Zach.
Appreciate it, man.
It's gonna be fast and furious the next couple of days. It's already started, Zach. Let me ask you again, reported, not official, but I'll throw a couple at you. Any surprises so far of the Tart, Tom, Strong, Huntley, Wren? Any of those you say to yourself, I thought maybe he'd make the team, or this could be a good candidate for the practice squad, etc.
Nope, all of those players are players I did not anticipate to be on the 53-man roster. I think Tart, if we go back to the beginning of training camp, you probably thought he was going to be on the team. Didn't play his way onto the roster. Actually, I would say, for lack of a better term, played his way off of the roster. He missed some time. You understand that. But he did not distinguish himself among that safety group. Otherwise, these are moves that I anticipated them making. We'll see how they fill the practice squad out after they reach their initial 53 on Tuesday. But I think the big moves you'll be looking for might be at, say, if they keep a third quarterback, right? Or depending what they do in the secondary in certain spots, and if they keep a 10th offensive lineman.
Zach, give me your general assessment of what you saw in that last preseason game, because as we've been talking about, there should have been a lot more guys playing with more of a sense of urgency in terms of trying to make this team. And I thought there was a lot of lack of effort across the board from some of these guys, which is making it easier in some regard for the Eagles to make cuts, but also making it more difficult because some of these guys, we thought they would be solid backup type players.
Yeah, it was a bad effort, right? Or I'm sorry, it was a bad performance. I should say. I'm always careful to assess effort, right? It's hard for me to ascertain that. But what you expect them to play better than they did, and frankly, it's not just Miami's first teamers going up against the Eagles' second teamers and third teamers. You can't say that because in the second half you saw a similar type of results. In my decade covering this team, I've learned not to overstate the preseason, and I found very little correlation between preseason performance and regular season performance. But to your point, D-Gun, there were a lot of players there who they're playing for jobs. That's how the Eagles structured this preseason, is they used practices to prepare the top of the roster, and they use preseason games to evaluate the bottom of the roster. And there are a lot of guys who could have and perhaps should have had better showings.
When you look at their situation at the safety position, do you see Reed Blankenship, Kayvon Wallace, are the guys that will be on the squad, or which one of those guys you think they'll keep? Which guy you think they'll let go?
Yeah, that's a tough one, Barrett. That's a pivot point one. And I went with Kayvon Wallace in that case. I did not go with Reed Blankenship. But based on performance, you can make a very strong case for Reed Blankenship.
Absolutely.
No question.
The reason I said Kayvon Wallace, there's a few things there. First off, he was a key special teams player for the Eagles last year, right? That's something you need to look at. If you simply look at the final preseason game the postseason game last year against Tampa Bay, he was in top 5 snaps for special teams, right? So he's someone that they rely on there. And frankly, I haven't seen Reed Blankenship enough in those situations. And when you look at first team kickoff the other night, I believe Kayvon Wallace was on the field. That said, special teams, I don't want to say it's easy to insert one for the other, but it's not like there's complex schemes there. So if Blankenship's the guy over Wallace, they can get Blankenship ready for that. But special teams and maybe some untapped potential is why I went with Kayvon Wallace.
Zach, let me stay on that for a minute with special teams because, Jake Elliott aside, we know what a year he had. What a phenomenal year. Sippo's very much a question mark for me. And just the return game, coverage units, maybe not as much, but it feels like that's an area where Howie had such a good offseason and addressed so many things, and they got so deep with significant players. I feel like that was, to an extent, overlooked. Do you agree with that?
It's a fair question. I wouldn't say overlook. I think it's more a philosophical approach to the roster, right? During Chip Kelly's time here, Chip really looked at, say, the bottom 10 spots, if you will, on the roster as special teams players. He wanted guys like Chris Maragos, and you go on down the list. They had Trey Burton came in for special teams, but when Brad Smith was here and Seje Ajiarotu, there were a few different guys there who were there expressly for special teams. Brian Berman. The way the Eagles have built the roster in Howie 2.0, if you want to call it that, is they use those bottom spots more for developmental purposes, right? The reason they carried Jordan Mailata on the team as long as they did was because they viewed him as a developmental player. Davion Taylor was and has been a developmental player. And they like to devote those back of roster spots more for development than maybe a second or third contract player who helps you on special teams.
I like what you said as far as guys being on the bottom half of the roster. I know there's a lot of spots that in this new NFL that they say don't have that. A lot of teams don't have that player they deem just a practice squad guy. Give me a couple that you say will make it just because of their prowess. I know Sean Bradley and right now Kayvon Wallace are the two top ones for me. Who would you say as far as returners would be up in that list?
Yeah, returner's tricky, Barrett, because going into this summer, I thought Britton Covey had a chance to really establish himself as the lead returner because he can return kicks and punts. And so you can, in essence, save a roster spot or combine those in the two. I don't think Covey did enough to differentiate himself in that area. So I think barring them adding somebody else, you'll see Quez Watkins return kickoffs and Jalen Reagor return punts. That said, returner can be a fairly fungible spot where you can add somebody if one becomes available. But if I had to look at their roster now, I would say you would have Watkins on kicks and Reagor on punts.
Don't say it, Zach. Please don't tell me Reagor's returning punts. Please don't say it.
Another guy
don't say it,
trying
Zach.
to get some sense into you that Reagor will be here, Derek. Yes, he will.
No, I've said consistently I don't think he'll be here. Those two said that he's going to make the roster. Okay. I said that he's had more than enough opportunities and hasn't taken advantage of the opportunities given to make this team. Now, I understand a receiver's only good as the amount of times a quarterback can get him the ball and give him opportunities. But for some reason, he's been an afterthought this entire training camp in a lot of ways. And I just don't see them. If there was ever a time, Zach, here's the way I put it, Zach. If there was ever a time Howie could get out from under a top draft pick early in his career, this year would be it because of so much excitement revolving around the addition of Adrian Brown, the development of Devonta Smith, adding Hassan Reddick and James Bradbury. All of those headlines overshadow him being ushered out the back door.
Yeah, so I hear you, and I'm not going to get on here and be a Jalen Reagor defender, right? I mean, we've all seen what's happened during these past 2 years. I do think he's had a good summer based on the way he's played in camp. I don't expect him to be cut. Okay. I could see him getting traded. And he profiles to me as a change of scenery type guy. If you're a different team, you look at all that's happened in Philadelphia during the past 2 years and you say maybe he just needs to be somewhere else. But if the Eagles can't find a trade for him, I expect him to be back and I expect him to be returning punts. Now there's a question there because, look, the first part of returning punts is catching the ball. And he had a very costly play in that Tampa Bay game last year. and it wasn't a one-off. You know, we've seen it before, so he needs to be consistent in that area. But I would say, and we saw this in Green Bay in 2020, and you saw this on his TCU tape, when the ball's in his hands in the punt return game, he has the chance to be dynamic.
Zach, where do you fall? We had the discussion a little bit earlier on the rest versus, you know, these guys out there. I think you can make an argument both sides. We saw maybe the Steelers dodge a couple of bullets yesterday with big time players who got hurt, but it doesn't look like it's very serious. We see guys like Brady out there, but the Eagles' primary objective, it seems like for the most part, is, man, we want to get to week 1 healthy, and we'll figure everything else out there. Where do you fall on that?
Well, that's an organizational philosophy, right? I mean, I remember talking to someone a few years ago upstairs and asking them what they wanted to see out of camp, and they said they want to get every starter on the field in week 1. And look, I get it. It's a matter of taste. Sean McVay with the Rams doesn't play his guys in the preseason. They won the Super Bowl last year. Other coaches, you know, you mentioned Mike Tomlin, but beyond that, we've seen starters in the preseason. Andy Reid always kind of had a formula for how to approach the preseason. So it's a matter of taste. What I'll say this: if you choose this route, you can't come out flat week 1. You can't come out flat in September, and you can't say in October and November that these guys just need to get some time together, and you know, and they were sorting things out early in the season. It doesn't work that way. But I think personally, so you asked my opinion, I think the preseason can be overrated from a preparation standpoint. And the reason I answer that is because in 2020 there was no preseason, and you know, there were no mini camps that year, and I didn't think the product suffered significantly or much at all, frankly, that year. So preseason really helps. You're down the roster guys, but I would say Barrett can speak to this more than anyone else. Some of these guys, you know, can step on the field on September 11th and be ready to play.
Yeah, you absolutely. But you got to be a guy that, you know, take care of your business. But I digress because I saw a lot of guys half-assing it. But you know, I'm not gonna say anything about it. But when we're, you know, I'm a trench guy. I love the trenches. How many offensive linemen you think they keep this year as opposed to years past? And I thought 9 would be good. You know, I have a lot of people saying 10 this year.
Yeah. Yeah, so I think 10 because I think they have the talent to keep 10, right? Like, I don't think they're pushing it. Whether you're looking at Jack Anderson, someone who can play 3 spots on the interior, when you're looking at Coyote Awashika, someone who could play tackle or guard, they have some candidates there for the 10th lineman. Now, they could also go deeper in other spots and 9 on the offensive line, knowing that Brett Toth is eligible to return from PUP in a few weeks, but you need to know where he is health-wise in order to do that.
Yeah, and that's good stuff. Zach, I know you got to run, but thanks for squeezing us in, man. Giving us a couple minutes today. Always tell everybody, check out Zach's work at The Athletic on Twitter as well, at ZBerm. And always great talking to you, Zach. We're looking forward to chatting with you throughout the season. Thank you.
Anytime. Thank you, guys.
All right, you got it. All right, you guys want to run through it? Zach's the best, by the way. Just absolute.
Very informative, you know.
Yeah, man. Pros.
Well thought out. Yes.
Yeah, you name it.